They say beans are the magical fruit, and while I can't promise a cure for their side effects, I can promise a batch of rich, smoky, perfectly tender beans that'll steal the show at any cookout. Let's get started. Hi, friend, come on in. To get started on these beans, I want to pick them over for stones and give them a good wash. I am using pinto beans, but navy or Great Northern are also great beans to use for baked beans. These beans are already triple washed, but I have noticed that they still seem to be dirty when I run water over them, so another wash won't hurt. I am using a pasta pot to do most of my washing and soaking as it makes it easier to drain and rinse the beans. A regular pot with a lid will also work for keeping the beans contained. I am using 2 pounds of beans and this will feed a small army. This recipe halves or doubles nicely. And if you're into preserving, this can also be pressure canned. There are options for how you want to deal with dried beans. An overnight soak if you aren't in a hurry, a fast soak, which is what I am doing, or if you have an instant pot, you can cook the beans until just short of tender and finish on the stove to make sure they don't get overcooked. I am doing the fast method. This entails bringing the beans to a boil for 1 minute, followed by a 1 hour soak. This simulates an overnight soak. I like to rinse my beans of their soaking water and simmer in fresh water. This helps remove some of the indigestible sugars that can cause discomfort and gives you a cleaner flavor base for the rest of the dish. I have tried adding in apple cider vinegar to detoot the beans, and it didn't work for me. I also tried adding baking soda to the simmering liquid, and I might have had more success with that, but it's such a subjective thing. With my now hydrated but raw beans, I want to gently simmer them on the stovetop until they are tender. A bean should squish easily when pressed on. Use a gentle simmer, as a hard simmer or boil can cause the beans to jostle around too much and they might break up into a mush. Depending on how old your beans are, this could take anywhere from 45 minutes for fresh beans to over an hour for older beans. Dried beans do not go bad, they just take longer to soften. While my beans are simmering, I can prepare the remaining ingredients. I want to finely dice 1 onion, dice about 10 ounces of bacon, and prepare the sauce. The sauce consists of 1 cup of vinegar. I like white vinegar, but this also works well with apple cider vinegar. A third cup of molasses. Side note, this was the last of my gallon of molasses. I had to go out and buy a new gallon. Guess we'll see how long it lasts. A quarter cup of mustard. If you don't have yellow mustard, mustard powder is a great substitute, but might require a little more vinegar. I add a little salt and pepper here, but I will taste this after it has simmered to adjust the final flavor. Bacon can be salty, and I want to be mindful of how much salt I add at this point. A half cup of brown sugar. I am using white sugar here as I don't keep brown sugar, but I will use a little more molasses to make sure I am getting the flavor I want. For the tomato portion of the sauce, I use a small can of tomato sauce and a quart of tomato water. If you are into preserving and have previously preserved tomatoes, this is a byproduct of the tomatoes. For a substitution for this odd ingredient, tomato juice, V8, or a 14-ounce can of tomatoes pureed and adjusted to 1 quart are all substitutions I have used in the past. I also used to use ketchup, but definitely be mindful of your sugar levels when using ketchup. As my beans continue to simmer, I want to get the bacon crisped up and the fat rendered out. I prefer frying my bacon for my beans rather than throwing in raw bacon. For me, raw bacon doesn't really render down, and soft, fatty bacon bites are not my idea of good eating. I have used smoked pork hocks in place of bacon, and it works great. Just toss them in to simmer with the sauce and remove before eating. You can shred off any meat on the hock if there is any. My bacon rendered more fat than I need for my onions, so I will remove most of the fat, saving it in case I need more or for later use. I want to leave about 1 tablespoon in the pot. To that, I added my onions and gently saute them. I'm not looking to pick up color. More, I just want to soften them up so that they can melt into the sauce better. If my bacon and onions are finished cooking before my beans are tender, I combine everything back into my Dutch oven with the sauce and turn the heat to low. Once my beans are finished simmering, I want to get them rinsed again and pour them into the sauce mixture. I like to bring this back up to a simmer so I know it is going into the oven or smoker hot. I feel like it wastes less time coming up to heat that way. It is possible to continue simmering this on the stove, but do watch that it doesn't scorch to the bottom. I prefer the gentle heat of the oven and usually go about 4 hours at 300 Fahrenheit or 150 Celsius. Don't worry about the beans falling apart at this point. Molasses will stop that from happening. This is because molasses contains calcium and other minerals that can toughen the skins of beans, preventing them from softening properly if added too early in the cooking process. So essentially, if your beans aren't tender before you add the molasses, you will have hard beans. I give the beans a stir about every hour they are in the oven or smoker. This helps keep them from sticking as well as making sure the liquid level doesn't drop too low. For the last 30 minutes, I remove the lid if they are too runny. These are for eating, so I will let them simmer down to the thickness I want. If I wanted to can them, they need to be runny. If you find your beans are a little too runny, mash up a small amount of beans and that will help thicken your sauce quickly. To finish off the beans, I give them a taste and adjust what I feel needs adjusting. A word from the wise: don't add too much molasses if you are going to can these. The canning process seems to intensify the flavor of the molasses and can make it overwhelming. Adjust molasses after canning. Otherwise, I generally add in a bit more molasses and salt and either more mustard or vinegar. I prefer a slightly vinegary taste to my beans, but I know some people prefer a more sweet bean, so adjust the brown sugar to your liking. Let me know if you give these beans a try and what adjustments you made. I'd also love to hear if your family has a traditional baked bean recipe or a regional twist. There are so many great variations out there, and it's always fun to learn how others grew up eating them. Everyone's pantry is different. And this is how the beans turned out. They are nice and thick, have a lovely light smokiness from the bacon, and are tender without being overly mushy. This is an old family favorite that I have made a few tweaks to, mostly because I love the extra vinegar. This makes about 10 cups of beans from the 2 pounds I started with. I love to enjoy these beans with bacon-wrapped ribs or soft buttered bread. Find those recipes linked in the cards. And thanks for watching.